Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. I believe we'll be able to cover probably 4 plants this week. I got just some short entries, especially on the edibles that come from my book, the Spring Foraging Cookbook. And then for the medicinal plants that come from my trees and shrubs, I have one very short entry, one a bit longer. Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on the clock. If we can do 5, we'll do 5. I mean, I I'm a plant geek. I love to talk about plants. I really do. And especially when they're edible. And so we will start with the foraging. And this is one, I'm not going to say it's like my favorite. It's River Beauty. Okay. River Beauty is an epilobium, same family as fireweed. There are actually 2 varieties of fireweed. And the one that most people think of when they think of fireweed is epilobium. The others are a completely different species. Fireweed has these pretty pink flowers, and people eat it or make tea out of it. The other one that's called fireweed, the name's not coming to me right now. It has like a white downy type flower, and it's more one we would use as an herb. It's quite pungent. You would not want to eat a whole plate of it. But when it comes to River Beauty, it's really a bit nicer as a wild vegetable. It's even better than fireweed. The only reason I don't eat more of it is because I have trouble finding it. If I could, I'd really enjoy this plant because the tender shoots are asparagus-like, and the leaves can be used as a pot herb. So if you have River Beauty growing near you, it's a tremendous resource. When very tender, you can absolutely add it to salads. But so I've been told. I've never done that because I have trouble finding it. And by the time I found it, it's mature. It's not tender enough to put in salads. Usually if I get any that's tender enough, it's just a small snack in the woods for me. I mean, if you live where this stuff grows, you're really very fortunate. And of course, I mean, there's so many plants that do grow in my area. I am so blessed with ramps and all kinds of Solomon seal and false Solomon seal and trilliums. And I mean, I'm surrounded by edible plants, but then of course there's so many that really are not native to my area that I wish I had. This one is native, but it's just not abundant. As I've said before, I am really hoping somehow some garlic mustard finds its way on my property. It is considered an invasive species, and it's not one you're supposed to plant, so if some bird were to drop some garlic mustard seeds on my property, I would be quite pleased. I mean, it takes over. It's like almost like kudzu. It's so invasive, but it's a abundant source of food. I mean, it's like having, it tastes like a cross between mustard and garlic. That's why it's called garlic mustard. Those are 2 of my favorite flavors. It's like having this continually producing garden that you don't have to tend. Yeah, see, I don't have a problem with plants like that. I really actually like them. your dandelions, your burdocks, and certainly your kudzu. Now, I mean, kudzu's the vine that ate the South. It will not grow at my elevation, but if I go down about 500 to 1,000 feet, literally, I can do that by driving 5 miles from my house. It's so thick, it's like strangling out everything in that area of the national forest. So, I would not hesitate, absolutely not hesitate to have kudzu on my property because it's one of our most valuable edible and medicinal plants. You just eat it before it takes over. And yeah, if you're passing that property on to future generations, you better inform your kids and tell them to tell their grandkids what's going on, because if they let it get out of control, it is going to just cover everything and destroy everything. There's no doubt about it. In this day and age, people don't really seem to keep family properties anymore, so I could see it as being a problem for like the next occupant of the home. So I have not planted kudzu, and to the best of anyone's knowledge, I will not be planting garlic mustard, though, like I said, I really wouldn't mind if a bird dropped some seeds on my property. I'd be actually pretty pleased about it. There's several things. Mints can take over. Oh gosh, there's so many burdocks. Certainly, nettles can absolutely. Nettles, can where I live. But good source of food, so I'm not complaining really. So river beauty is one I really wish I had more of, and really, though, to my taste, I wouldn't eat it in large quantities by itself. It's well, I mean, in the shoot form, it is more like asparagus, and what's my maximum of how much asparagus I'd eat at one sitting, right? A fourth of a pound, probably a half pound at most. I mean, I love asparagus more than most people, and I'm not going to sit there and eat a ton of asparagus. So, when I find some, I enjoy it, but I rarely find it, unfortunately. But apparently it does grow more abundantly in some areas than others, and where it grows, especially in New England, people really develop a taste for it. I mean, it's one of those they look for with like fiddleheads and such, and it's really a popular edible. Usually, like I said, when I find it, it's already gotten too mature, and from that first stage of shoot to maturity, it gets increasingly bitter. I mean, like day to day, it gets more and more bitter. So if I ever find a good stand, and I'm hoping I can find some, I'm going to try to get to it before it reaches maturity. And, if I do, maybe I can give you some good recipes. But right now, I mainly know about this one theoretically because I haven't found enough to make it a staple of my diet. So anyway, now one that I know a little bit more about and are rushes. Now rushes are super common. Rushes are related. I guess rushes are in the sedge family, if I'm not mistaken. Sedges look much like grass. But remember the old saying, sedges have edges, okay? Grass comes in blades of grass. Rushes are thicker and have corners. Sedges have edges. And that's your rule of thumb. As far as I know, at least in America, this may not be true worldwide, but rushes can be used interchangeably as food. And they were staple crops for Native Americans and early settlers, wild foods that were a big part of their diet. The one I harvest is most commonly known as bulrush, but there are actually two species called bulrush. And the one known as, I guess it's Tule. It's spelled Tule, and I've heard it pronounced Tool, and I've heard it pronounced Tule, and I've heard it pronounced Tule, but where I live, it's most commonly called Tule. Where I live, that's the one that is more popular as a wild edible, and of course, there are not that many foragers. So when I say there's more popular, like 5 people that talk, know about things, we chat. All 5 of us probably enjoy this one. But rushes are really great for basket weaving. So I do harvest rushes, and great for making cordage. So this is a dual use plant for me. So it's one I've always got my eye out for which I've always got my eye out. But both species of bulrush have roots that can be made into a flower. And, speaking of kudzu, it has a starchy root. And any plant that has a starchy root is a premium of value when it comes to wild food, because that's a lot of calories there, and easily digestible calories for the most part. Like with daylilies and Jerusalem artichokes, sunchokes, whatever you want to call them. They have inulin, which if your body's not used to inulin, your gut will learn to digest inulin. But if you've had it for the first time, it's going to give you some serious gas and stomach upset. Inulin is essentially a sugar that is hard to digest. But anyway, the starchy foods, anything you can find, are, I guess, in terms of food value, just next to nuts. I mean, nuts have protein and fat. Very hard to find protein and fat in vegetable foods, obviously. Again, kudzu has a little bit. I mean, the leaves actually have some protein to them, which is another reason I think kudzu is like the ultimate survival food. But starches will give you energy. Starches will keep you alive. You could spend hours eating mustard greens, garlic mustard. You're only going to get so much nutrition from those leaves. Starchy root vegetables and nuts and seeds are where you get most of the nutrition from your plant-based foods. That is why it's like almost impossible for a vegetarian to survive in the woods. I love to forage. I love all these vegetable foods. They all have nutrition. But you will starve to death eating nothing but leaves and berries. Berries give you a little sugar. You're going to give you a few more calories, but you can't live on that, especially in the seasons where berries are not. And when you don't have berries and such, and you don't have nuts on the trees, you still have starchy roots in the ground. And so, I really think that's like the primary, if you were going to learn to identify wild plants for a purely survival perspective, I would definitely prioritize anything that has a starchy root vegetable, something like a potato, or a bulb like of the alliums, because they have some starches and sugars, especially a lot more calories in an onion than there is in a piece of lettuce, especially when cooked. Ditto with mushrooms. Mushrooms have starches, mushrooms have sugars, mushrooms have proteins. They have to be cooked. Always have to be cooked. There is no way a raw foods vegan is going to survive in the woods. That vegan needs per person now, probably about 50 acres of cultivated vegetable food to survive per person. And it could be even more, like 200. I've read different studies. I guess it depends on how many calories you consume in a day. But when they talk about like how environmentally conscious the vegan diet is, no, it's not. It's really not. You kill a deer and you've got calories, nutrient-dense fat and protein calories, and that deer has had basically like zero impact upon its environment. That is environmentally friendly eating. Okay, it's if you raise cattle or pigs and you raise them in natural conditions, the way we would in permaculture, using a paddock shift system, that is minimally, actually good for the environment. It has a negative. If you actually look at grazing animals and such, the way they move across the pasture, they're being followed by birds that eat the insects out of their poop and all. That's actually not a carbon neutral, but that animal is actually sequestering carbon into the soil. If you care about such things, carbon is not a concern for me. I'm a carbon-based creature, and so are you. And carbon's the most abundant, if I'm not mistaken, element in our entire atmosphere, and it's part of every plant and animal and everything. I don't worry about carbon, honestly. But if you did, and you were prioritizing your diet based on your so-called carbon footprint, being a carnivore or an omnivore, as I am, is far better for the environment than being a vegan or a vegetarian, because I've explained this so many times. I mean, you're living off of farmed vegetables and grains. And a lot of acreage has to be used to produce those farm vegetables and grain to give you a diet that God didn't intend it. He intended you to eat meat and vegetables and seeds and nuts. Um, to do you have to have a monoculture system, acres and acres of soybeans, just to put that tofu on your plate. And a lot of industrial chemicals are used in there. Agrochemicals a lot. I mean, you think you're eating this vegan diet that's not hurting anything, but I mean, every time it's time for planting, you go through there and first of all, you're destroying billions of microorganisms in the soil, right? But you're also killing all kinds of mice and birds and bugs and, smaller, and it can actually be, up to the size of possums or rabbits. I mean, they're getting slaughtered every time it's, time to disc in that field. Even if you do a no-till system, the machinery is going to kill a lot of creatures. Then you're growing this monocrop, which is not how nature's designed. Insects specifically have these specific ranges of colors they see with their eyes. So you may have this one bug, whatever it is, that has a specific plant that makes up part of its diet. And in nature, that plant's going to be scattered in with a million other plants. And it's going to find one every now and then, and it's going to feast on that plant, and that's it for that plant. A monocrop, you've taken like wheat and put it all in one field. You've taken soybeans or corn, and something that feeds on corn, its eyes see a buffet in front of it. And so because of that, because of the nature of monocropping, the plants are not mixed up with other plants that may even have a repellent quality for that insect or that bird. Birds can be very much the same way. Raccoons will go crazy in your cornfield, so will deer. And they find it because there's this huge stand of corn. Or it could be sorghum. Deer don't like sorghum. Raccoons and possums love it. They will find it and they will eat it. And so because of that, you then have to soak that field down with all kinds of pesticides. And in the process of doing that, you're killing thousands of insects, millions of insects, but you're also killing thousands of animals that also are going to be in that field that are going to be poisoned or who eat those insects. All kinds of birds are going to be killed. So then comes harvest time, and harvest time is an absolute slaughterhouse. There are so many, anytime any crop in the field is harvested, especially by machinery. Now, it's totally different if you're out there hand picking it, but no one's out there hand picking soybeans. I guarantee you that. I mean, combines going through a cornfield, yeah, it's a bloodbath. So your vegan diet is actually killing tons of critters, poisoning the soil with tons of chemicals that are going to be around for generations, and also not healthy. So next time someone gets all self-righteous with you, explain to them how it's more environmentally friendly to eat a deer than it is to eat tofu. It's more environmentally friendly to eat steaks from a cow that's been raised on pasture than it is to eat, I don't know, almond milk or whatever these people live on, soy boys, and the animal protein and fat gives your brain what it needs so that you can think rationally and not be governed by your emotions. You ever notice how vegans and vegetarians are depressed, usually on a lot of antidepressants, most often, more often than not. And actually, I have the numbers to back that up. It's over 75%. You ever notice how they're irrational? They get emotional, they get angry, they never justify a political position or a philosophical point or a religious topic, anything with reason. And they're up talkers. I actually intended to end that one in a question. It's, up talking is when you end everything up, so everything sounds like a question, which shows that you're not a confident human being. Well, I was actually asking a question there. Vegans and vegetarians are very often up talkers, and it's because their emotions rule their minds because they don't have animal fats and proteins to make them emotionally stable and rational. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. These people need to eat some bacon. And, if you want to have some vegetables with it, I love a BLT. Give me a BLT and some good homemade mayonnaise on there. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's absolutely one of my favorite foods. So going back to rushes, as I said, the roots make a very good flour. And if you have to prioritize wild vegetable foods, look for those starchy root vegetables. And as I said, kudzu would also fall into that category. It's an easy one, along with fall acorns. It's one I would absolutely prioritize. I'm just going to say, thank God I don't have to rely solely on wild food. I mean, even if I don't have a garden, I can go to the grocery store. I mean, there are a few perks to modern life, even though I tend to be more of a traditionalist. I have to say, thank God I don't have to rely on acorns and rush roots, tule roots for my diet. It's just a nice bonus. It's additional nutrition and flavor. So, but and with the things I can buy at the grocery store, I mean, it allows me to prepare wild foods in ways I couldn't if I was relying completely off the earth. I mean, think about it. If in the mountains of North Carolina, where I live, about the only, what would you say, indigenous, the only natural to the area animal that has enough fat for cooking, cooking or even burning a lamp is bear. Bear fat was, that's what kept our ancestors alive in the mountains. It's not the nicest. I mean, if the bear's been eating clean, it can be really good, actually. A lot of times, bears like to go dumpster diving, and the fat can be really pretty nasty. And so I would not be doing a lot of deep frying. Just put it that way. I mean, no fried fish and no French fries. I mean, very few if I had to rely on bear fat, because our other game animals in the area are deer, rabbits, squirrels. Generally, squirrels can have a tiny bit, but I mean, rabbits are so lean. If you rely on them as your only source of food, you can actually die. You're not getting enough fat. You're getting lots of protein, but not enough fat. And deer are, generally speaking, not very fat at all. So I'm actually glad. Yeah, I'll use seed oils. I mean, I'm not. I would rather not. I would much rather use beef tallow, suet, lard, olive oil as my, sesame oil is very nice. But I'm not going to turn my nose up at canola oil just because it's trendy and maybe the best thing for my health. I'd rather not starve. I mean, really. I mean, what's good for your health is probably to fix some French fries in canola oil rather than say, oh, I have no access to any oil because of where I live and I can't. I'm morally opposed to buying seed oils from the grocery store. No, I'd rather have some calories in my stomach. And but yeah, I totally do prioritize, especially beef tallow. I use a lot of it, and lard, and and olive oil. Those are probably the three I use the most. And butter. I use a lot of butter. But go back 100 years ago, out of season, nobody had butter up here. I mean, if you were lucky enough to have a milk cow, you'd have some butter. Some butter. Certainly not as much as you would wish to have. Going back to ancient times, especially among the Celts, my ancestors, butter was a sign of wealth. The more butter you had, the more cows you had, the wealthier you were, and butter was traded as currency. People throughout history have always put a premium on fats, because they are essential for life. And, the worst mistake we made was switching over to margarine, saying it was more healthy than butter. It's not. Vegetable shortening, horrible for you. And, when you're ranking them, I'm going to say canola oil's not great. Not great. But it's better than going hungry. And it's better for you than margarine or Crisco, which have been altered with hydrogen molecules to be shelf-stable and all that. So, what would be another good option? Sunflower oil? That's another seed oil I have no problem with. Walnut oil is fantastic. I guess a walnut's actually a drupe, But if you're all freaked out about seed oils, remember they're not all created equally um, at all. In fact, for some applications, corn oil is not really bad for you either. It just depends on how you eat it, how it's consumed. For deep frying, corn oil really isn't so bad because remember, when you're deep frying something, you're putting a food item, an article of food, whether it's meat or whatever, that's full of water into hot oil. And if it's fresh oil and it's the right temperature, the steam escaping that food will actually keep it from absorbing oil. That's why fried food is crispy. When you use old oil that's been used several times, or you cook it at too low a temperature, you end up with greasy foods. And that's when you really have to worry about what kind of oil you're frying in. Fried food should actually not be greasy. That's a really common misconception. If you go to a restaurant, especially seafood, and you have greasy food, you should really complain and leave without paying. I mean, just leave your food and say, look, I'm paying good money for a good meal. I don't appreciate that you're reusing the oil to the point you can't raise it to the temperature, and I've ended up with greasy food because it can make you very sick. Any restaurant owner that serves you greasy fried food really does not appreciate your business, and they need to go out of business. That, as someone who's worked in food most of my life, I don't have any patience or tolerance for that. That's an insult to the customer. That's somebody who would feed you something rotten just as easily as they'll feed you rancid oil. I mean, they don't care, and they should not be rewarded for that. They should go out of business. It's more common than not, though. I mean, it's a cost-cutting thing, and so many people reuse oil far longer than they should. The smoke point, every time you heat that oil, the smoke point lowers, so the next time you have to cook at a lower temperature, and eventually you end up making your customers sick. So anyway, as I said, the tule or rush flour made from the roots is actually, it's a lot like flour made from acorns. It does not have gluten. Again, people are freaked out. Oh, gluten, gluten. Until a few years ago, gluten intolerance was not a thing. There were a few people with celiac disease, which is genetic. What's happened, the reason we have gluten intolerance, one, it's being overdiagnosed. Okay, most people don't have gluten intolerance. I'm sorry, if you're hearing this, don't get offended. If you do have gluten intolerance, it's probably because of Roundup and such. It's been sprayed on wheat that disrupts your gut health, or because you've taken a lot of antibiotics and you don't have the right bacteria in your gut to digest the naturally occurring protein called gluten in wheat. You can absolutely, maybe I shouldn't say this, I'm not giving medical advice, okay? I have known, ex-girlfriend of mine was diagnosed gluten intolerant, okay? Actually, it turned out she had appendicitis, and she almost died. And the doctor said, oh, you have gluten intolerance. You have an upset stomach because you can't eat bread. No, actually, her appendix was rupturing. So take that for whatever. I don't have a lot of confidence in the American medical profession in any way, shape, or form. But that's only one example of grossly incompetent misdiagnosis. First of all, they said it was menstrual cramping, and then they said it was gluten intolerance, and she literally passed out in a restaurant bathroom and was rushed to the hospital with a ruptured appendix. Any freaking moron. You don't have to have a medical degree to feel someone's lower abdomen and figure out they have an inflamed appendix, but apparently the doctors were just too arrogant to bother. I would say too arrogant or incompetent. What do you want to call it? But are they stupid, or do they just not care? It's got to be one or the other, right? Well, she almost died. Anyway. So if you're going to make... so what I was going to say about that, and I've known several people, if they do have a gluten sensitivity, she did not. As I said, it was an appendix, but I've known others that did. Older forms of wheat, like einkorn and spelt, have lower levels of gluten, and they're less genetically modified. They're often far more easily digested, but also getting those good bacteria and fungi in the gut, the good probiotics. You can take those probiotic supplements. They're not really very good. Kefir, Kefir, I think it's actually pronounced kefir. I always say kefir. Whether milk kefir or water kefir, kombucha, miso. I don't consider me anti-soy. I actually do like miso and soy sauce. I like my fermented soy. I do not like soybeans as a food in any way, shape, or form. They disgust me. But miso, full of great bacteria. Just good old homemade sauerkraut. Just sauerkraut made with salt. It's lactobacillus that ferments it. Kimchi, obviously. Kosher dill pickles. They don't have to be kosher. You don't have to have a rabbi bless them. But just use salt and water. I mean, it's the kosher recipe. Some dill, some peppercorns, coriander's wonderful in there. Whatever you want. Add mustard seed. Good cornichons. Good French. But fermented foods will really help with that issue. My Tai Chi Chuan, Tui Na, and Chinese herbal and kung fu teacher when I was a kid, as teens to early 20s. Grandmaster, trained in the Shaolin temples of China. The dude's like, something out of a kung fu movie. He had actual celiac disease. And the way he got into all that was he was a teenager in the mountains of North Carolina, backwoods, not anybody you think would get into this lifestyle. The doctors could not help him with his celiac disease. He ended up going to China as a teenager and being treated with herbs and got healthy and got better. And his herbalists were Shaolin monks. They were kung fu guys. I mean, we're talking like something straight out of a movie, right? And he studied in the Shaolin temples. And man, I mean, I was incredibly blessed to get to know this guy. I mean, he was a deputy sheriff who was just, conservative and solid and Christian, and he had been trained in the Shaolin temples of China. I mean, something like out of a movie. I'm telling you, he could do things you wouldn't believe. But that's how I got into Chinese herbal medicine, and it actually goes back to somebody that had celiac disease. So, don't think I'm saying it doesn't exist. It's just like with autism and so many other things, either something's gone terribly wrong in this country and everybody is sick or has some kind of disorder, or our incompetent medical profession is misdiagnosing and overdiagnosing just so they can put everybody on expensive pharmaceutical drugs. And I'm betting on that one, actually. Not to say that our diet's not totally screwed up, not to say that we don't have an epidemic of obesity and heart disease and diabetes. We do. And again, that's because of our government experts who said you need to follow this food pyramid and eat just basically a bunch of sugar. But no, I honestly do believe that this whole gluten intolerance epidemic, apparently, is because of the chemicals we put in our food, because of the genetic engineering of the food. Those are legit, Your body shouldn't have to digest unnatural things. But it's also a matter of misdiagnosis and overdiagnosis so that they can put you on a lot of expensive medications. Hopefully you don't end up like my ex-girlfriend and almost die because your doctor was too arrogant or stupid. And I can give you many stories like that. I mean, just totally brings to mind my uncle who was diagnosed with diabetes. It turned out he had genetic fatty liver. They treated him for the wrong disease for 20 years until he died. Wouldn't have been too hard just to take the time to do the right diagnosis, but you actually have to give a damn to do that. You met a doctor recently? There's a reason, like, you remember the show House? They're always portrayed as jerks. A lot of them are. Oh, I'm sorry, but a lot of them really are. Last doctor I went to, this was, years and years. I haven't been to a doctor in over 20 years. I was working as an assistant manager at a drugstore at the time. It was, early 20s. And I had to take time off work. I went in there for my appointment. I got there on time. I'm sitting there for like 45 minutes, and then I see him leaving in golf attire. I went up, I said, "Did the doctor just leave?" Yes, he has an appointment. He'll be right. I said he's dressed for golf. Well, he'll be right back. Just wait. I sat there for 4 freaking hours till he finally came back in from golf. And then he made me sit there for another 45 minutes while he ate lunch and changed clothes and got ready. And I went back there and I said, here's the bill for my time. This is the amount of money I would have made. And you know what? I saw you leave here in your golf clothes. So don't you even dare try to challenge this. I'll be on the phone with the CEO of the hospital, and I will have my attorney bill you for my time if you do not pay me. Well, suddenly he could take care of me real quick, couldn't he? I was in and out of there in about 15 minutes, and had a prescription for the little respiratory infection that was ailing me, and when I got up to pay, they said, there's no charge. This is a free appointment. And we apologize for taking your time. So, that's what we're dealing with. That literally, that is what we're dealing with. And of course, it was all bluff for me to say I was going to call an attorney. I couldn't afford an attorney. But you better believe the newspaper would have been told of what happened, and everybody in town would have been told what happened, and I would have chewed out the CEO of that hospital, and everybody on their board of trustees, I guess it is, would have gotten the full story of what that done. But if he did it to me, he did it to 1,000 other people who never had the guts to complain. That's what I'm saying. If you go in a restaurant and you get bad food, complain. You go to a doctor, you get bad food, complain. If you call your congressman and he doesn't do what you want him to do, complain, complain, complain. Because being a jerk sometimes is actually helping everybody else. And I'm not saying you're being a jerk. You have a legitimate complaint. You have a reason. Your money and your time is valuable. And when somebody, especially in government or healthcare or insurance or law enforcement, does not respect your time and money, you have not only a reason and a right to complain, you have a duty because it's going to help somebody else. Well, anyway, if you're going to make bread out of acorn or rush root flour, you're going to have to add either some wheat flour to get the gluten or some baking powder or baking soda, just like you would with cornbread. It's going to give you a rise. Otherwise, you can make a flatbread out of it like a pita, and it's actually pretty darn good. The bulrush, the tule, is also harvested for tender shoots before they get kind of woody, before they get tough. And for the pollen, just like you might harvest pollen from cattails and such. You can really think of rush as cattails. You can almost use it in any way you would use cattails. Roots can be peeled and eaten just as you would potatoes or Jerusalem artichokes. And they contain sugars, so that's energy you're going to get from it that you need if you're depending on it for food. The shoots, stems, and cores, cook them as a green vegetable. Steam saute method, just as you would asparagus. Or you can slice them thin and eat them raw. But remember, when you eat raw foods, you don't get as much nutrition from them. Roots are very good added to roasts and stews, but they're just fantastic cooked with fat and onions, just the way you would potatoes. So remember, rushes grow by water. So frying up those roots and serving them with fish is just a natural combination. The pollen is not terribly useful on its own. I'd say not quite as useful as cattail. It just doesn't have as much, it takes longer to collect. This is a much smaller plant. If possible, it is nutritious though. So if possible, combine it with pine pollen or cattail pollen. Remember, pine pollen increases testosterone in men. So you may or may not want to have a lot of it. But definitely combine it with cattail pollen or pine, which can be very abundant. Chia seeds are really good. A great combination with chia seeds. Makes really calorie dense. You get some of the fat and protein from the seeds, and you can mix it up with a little bit of fat and do I gave you the recipe for pemmican before. It's the ancient Native American energy bar. You take some dried meat and you take some fat and dried berries and nuts. Well, you can add all that pollen to it. You can add seeds to it, like chia or sesame or sunflower seeds, and just kind of cook it all together and dry it out, and yeah, it's like an ancient energy bar. It's just really fantastic. I mean, it sounds weird, but it's really to what the Native Americans, what fruitcake was to medieval Europeans. It's your food that's going to keep you going. It stores, and I mean, you can eat pemmican that's years old. I mean, unless the fats kind of turn rusty, it's going to be fine. And I've never had any that's actually turned rusty. And if you put a bunch of pine pollen in it, let me tell you, you get that testosterone up, and you got your camp axe and your knife and your gun, and you're going to feel like a real mountain man, whether it puts hair on your chest or not. I have no idea. The nutritional content, though, probably would actually make your beard grow thicker. I mean, because it's just full of good fat and protein. And yeah, I mean, that's really actually good. I mean, I know it sounds weird. I mean, it's like a fruitcake. We don't think of mixing sweet and savory the way our ancestors used to, but it's survival food I think anybody would really enjoy if you give it a shot. It's sort of like, what would I say, a mix between beef jerky and a fruitcake. It's weird, I know, but it's actually pretty darn tasty. It really is. So now let's get to our medicinals. We're going to start with Cephalanthus. Now this is Buttonbush, and this is an easy one because there's only one. There's only one with documented use in herbal medicine, and it's native to my region, so it's not like I have to tell it apart from a bunch of things that look a lot like it. Plants for Future tells us that buttonbush was often employed medicinally by native North American Indian tribes who used it in treating a range of ailments. It is little used in modern medicine, and I agree, little used in modern herbalism, but a tea made from the bark is astringent and emetic, that means it can make you throw up. Febrifuge, which means it helps you break a fever, and tonic, good for digestion essentially. A strong decoction has been used to treat diarrhea and dysentery, stomach complaints, hemorrhages, etc. That astringent quality can, constrict the blood vessels and help with hemorrhaging. It has been used as a wash for eye inflammations, and a decoction of either the roots or fruit have been used as a laxative to treat constipation. The leaves are astringent, diuretic, and tonic. A tea has been used to check menstrual flow and to treat fevers. For kidney stones, pleurisy, etc. So really actually pretty useful. Plant has a folk reputation for relieving malaria, that diaphoretic fever-breaking quality probably. And the inner bark has been chewed in the treatment of toothaches. Now going back a little bit, King's American Medical Dispensatory of 1898 says, buttonbush is indigenous to the United States, found in damp places along the margins of rivers and ponds. Very true. Could be used as either a tincture or a tea, a decoction. It goes through the chemical compositions. Unless you're a chemist, it's not going to really interest you very much, probably. But under actions, medical uses, and dosages, it says it is tonic, febrifuge, aperient, and diuretic. The bark has been used with much success in intermittent and remittent fevers. That's malaria, again, or anything like that. COVID, somewhat like that sometimes. The inner bark of the root forms an agreeable bitter, which is often employed in coughs and as a diuretic for gravel, that's kidney stones, bladder stones, such. The plant deserves further investigation. This is 1898. Unfortunately, I don't think it got much further investigation. By 1916, Pure Foods and Drugs Act came along and basically made herbal medicine illegal. So, really up until the 60s, though, most medicines we were taking were plant-based, but a lot of the investigation, a lot of the research into plants dropped off dramatically after about 1900. Let's see. According to Cobert, who was a scientist in 1892, cephalanthin, which is one component of this plant, is poisonous to both warm and cold-blooded animals, producing emesis, spasms, and paralysis, destroying blood corpuscles, and converting them into methaglobulin and oxyhemoglobin. So I would use this in its natural state. I would not try to separate the chemical constituents. The Peterson Field Guide to Eastern and Central Medicinal Plants says, American Indians chewed the bark for toothache. Bark tea was used as a wash for eye inflammation, also emetic, and to stop bleeding. Leaf tree was drunk to stop menstrual flow. Thought to be tonic, diuretic, astringent, to promote sweating. It's one of the fever-breaking properties. It helps break a fever by producing sweating, promoting sweating. Leaf tea once used for fevers, cough, gravel, such as kidney stones, malaria, palsy, pleurisy, and toothaches. Interestingly, this plant, which superficially resembles a small cinchona bush, that's the source of quinine, belongs to the same family and has a folk reputation, as does dogwood, for relieving fevers and malaria. So, next pandemic comes along, you might want to learn to identify buttonbush. I normally use tulip poplar or dogwood. Dogwood, they both have some quinine type properties. That's my go-to. But buttonbush. But it does say warning: the glucoside, cephalothin, and cephalin could be toxic. So again, we're going to want to keep this in its natural state and not use it. Really in pharmaceutical dosages. Where you would take and separate the components. We're going to want to use this as a tea or a tincture, and not in huge amounts if we use it at all. Now, another one is Cephalotaxus. Now, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't have a lot on this because it doesn't have a lot of medicinal use. Cephalotaxus, if you're familiar with Latin plant names, you may have noticed the word taxus. Taxus is yew. Yew is one of the most poisonous plants on the face of the earth. It's in that top 5, along with poison hemlock and monkshood and water parsnip and water hemlock and definitely false hellebore. These are super toxic plants. Yew definitely belongs in there. This, however, is Cephalotaxus, not just taxus. This is the plum yew, or Japanese plum yew. It's used in landscaping. It's been naturalized in my area. It's obviously not native, as all these actually come from Japan or China. They're Asian plants. The plum yews are not known to be strongly medicinal. However, some varieties have shown promising cancer research. Now, this is interesting because the poisonous yew, it has a really weird looking fruit. I don't know why you would eat it, but some people do and they die. Okay. In fact, there was this beautiful stand of yews in a little park when I was a kid that I loved to play in. Apparently some kid ate a berry, got sick, and they killed them all and tore them up. And I loved those plants. I climbed in them and hid under them and everything a kid would do, So that was really sad for me to see them gone. But there's no doubt they're toxic, very, very toxic. The wood makes fantastic bows for archery. But other than that, this is one you never want to mess with, except as an ornamental. The Japanese plum yew seems to be related, but less toxic. Okay, the actual yew itself, the taxus, has shown some promise as being an anti-cancer agent, but it is so very poisonous. I've mentioned before there was a really shady character who called himself a doctor, who was apparently a doctor even for Michael Jackson, who was a total charlatan and fraud. You can look him up. I'm not going to say his name. I don't know why his books are still being sold. He promoted yew as a cancer cure, and people have even gotten in touch with me and said, can you tell me where I can buy yew? And I'm like, no, I cannot tell you where you can buy yew as a medicinal herb, because it will kill you. Okay, this guy who wrote these books, who was a very popular celebrity, I think he was even on Oprah one time. Real Hollywood crowd. He made a fortune conning people and ripping them off. He's what gives herbal medicine a bad reputation. For some reason, you can still go buy his books on Amazon brand new. His publishing company has not taken the lesson that the man was actually charged by federal officials for practicing medicine without a license, calling himself a doctor when he was not a doctor, and probably leading to the death of people, okay? Until that's taken care of, we're going to have to, as herbalists, keep dealing with this. Now, there are some folk uses for you as an anti-cancer agent. I'm not entirely sure how it's used. I haven't looked into it enough to know, because every time I'm being asked a question, it's Dr. So-and-so said you ought to use you for cancer. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You'll die if you do that. If you use it the way he recommended, you're going to die. So we're going to stop this conversation right here. If you want to grow you yourself, you can get seeds. It's an ornamental plant. If you want to do your own research into how to use it medicinally, that's fine. I'm not touching this, okay? Now, when it comes to plum yew, though, it's important to note that plum yew is not the same species as yew. So, according to Plants for the Future, the fruit of this plant is said to be astringent and even inedible with fully ripe. However, several of its subspecies produce a nice sweet fruit. So this is a yew-like plant, we'll call it that, slightly related to yew, that actually can produce edible fruit. Do not confuse the two at all. You eat regular yew, you will die. You misuse regular yew, you will die. If you're interested in this family of plants for its anti-cancer properties, my strong recommendation would be to focus on plum yew and learn how to use it. Okay, I think I will just cover one more because it's super short entry. Just like I said, there's only one buttonbush in my region. There's also one leatherleaf. The Latin name is so hard to pronounce. It is Chamaedaphne, Chamaedaphne. It's really hard to say unless you really focus on it. Chamaedaphne, calyculata. There we go. Chamaedaphne calyculata. I'm going to call it leatherleaf. Really one I'm very familiar with. It's a rare shrub in most places, but not at all uncommon in Bladen County, North Carolina, where my grandparents lived. So I grew up with leatherleaf, and basically anyone outside of Bladen, maybe Duplin, and a couple other neighboring counties probably never saw it. But my family's lived in Bladen County at least since the 1700s. Seems some of them probably came in the 1600s. So this is like, I know those plants like the back of my hand. And the only medicinal use I found on it, a poultice of the leaves has been applied to inflammation, and infusion of the leaves has been used to treat fevers. Seems that was probably Waccamaw Indian use, could have been one of the Catawban tribes in eastern United States taught it to the settlers, and it grows so uncommonly outside of the area that most people don't even know what it is, much less how to use it. So not, super medicinal, but useful if you find it. And if you happen to have conditions where it would grow, you might want to get one as a nice plant in your yard, because it's pretty. Leatherleaf is actually rather nice. So that one brings back memories for me. There were some growing right on my grandparents' property, But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there. We've covered some really interesting plants, and I know I've wandered far afield with my ramblings. That's what I do. And of course, if you've listened to me now for over 200 shows, we've been doing this a long time. We're going on 5 years now. You know that I have the gift of the blarney, as the Irish call it, and an opinion on just about anything. But if you try any of my recipes, you know it's well worth listening, because my food is darn tasty. And of course, these herbal remedies, a lot of them can save your life. I think it's very important. Remember, I always say start with the trees, then learn the shrubs and woody vines before you get into all the little green herbs, all the little green plants we call herbs, because our trees and bushes are potently medicinal. Well, anyway, y'all, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. And next time, I actually got a little treat. We're going to talk about Pipsiscilla. That's one of my favorite plants. So spotted wintergreen, alligator wintergreen, another one of those native to North Carolina that one of my favorites. But you'll find varieties of Chimaphila or Pipsissewa throughout the country, and I think you're going to really enjoy that show. So have a good one, and I'll talk to you next week.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, for your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.